That, so to me, everything is always one step sideways from whatever you think you're trying to do. You know, it doesn't go in a straight line. Nothing does. But if you're receptive enough to be able to realize that while you're going for that, oh, I say, okay, I'll move myself. That's all it takes, and most people can't do that.
One more question here. As I've told you several times since you and I have known each other, British guitar players seem to revere Scotty in a way that nobody else does. And you know, Mark Knopfler, George Harrison, Keith Richards, the list goes on and on. You know, they talk about Scotty, and when they get together with him, it's like first they're in awe, and then they kind of pal up to him, and he makes them feel comfortable. And that doesn't happen in the U.S. And what is it about musicians in the UK?
Well, I don't know if the missing link is that the Americans didn't get it, because there is a tremendous prejudice, and I don't know if this is still true, but I was really aware of it when I went there in '63. There's a prejudice all through outside of the South towards people from the South, which we have. It's the reverse in Britain. If you're from London in Britain and you hear somebody speaking with a northern accent, which is a bit slower than the Londoners speak, there's an assumption that this person isn't that bright. And so if you grew up in the north, as I did, and as Mark Knopfler did, and who else did you mention?
George Harrison.
George. You will find most of these great musicians are coming from way, you know, at least 150 miles north of London. Sting even, who isn't quite in the same kind, but it's significant that the Beatles came from the north. Keith Richards, of course, is not in this category. He is a London man, and Eric Clapton's a London man. But it just happened that some of the people you mentioned are from the north. So my understanding of when rock and roll happened in America, it was dismissed on one of two counts. Either it was by black people, and they don't do anything worth anything in the prejudiced view of the rest of the country, or it's Southerners who's just about as bad. So a guy comes up, which is Elvis, doing, you know, a white man doing black man, that's about as bad as you can get. So people didn't take it serious, they just did not recognize it. And what made them recognize it was the fact that British people recognized it. Then the Americans say, okay, so now people play kind of lip service to the original rock and rollers, but I don't think they get it in the same way we do. Jerry Lee Lewis was never taken seriously by Americans. Johnny Cash is a bit different because he's sort of a southern icon, and people don't quite know what he's. I mean, but he isn't a virtuoso in the way we talk about at all. So they can almost like he fits what they think it should be like. But the idea of a guitarist being a southern guitarist and being brilliant, come on now. I mean, it isn't true what I'm saying, because people do sort of understand Chet Atkins, but that's different again because it's a technical thing, and Chet didn't revolutionize anything. He doesn't think he did, and he didn't. No, but what we're talking about here is somebody who broke through, who made a complete change of attitude, and it's not something that the Americans are happy to think a white southern man can do. I mean, that's my view. I don't know if that's right.
You know, I'm not arguing against you, but I feel like that musicians from the UK and writers from the UK tend to have much more of a sense of history, and because in the US, you know, they could care less. I mean, Scotty is not.
Yeah, revered. But then why do we pick out Scotty? You know, you could go back to Les Paul if you want. You know, Les Paul is, you know, Scotty himself would point us back to Les Paul. So
Al Farlow.
And, you know, he would point us in all sorts of other directions except himself. So, as far as history goes, I think we, and I'm saying now, you know, musicians and people who are interested in American culture, which is, you know, for some an oxymoron, but we accept this idea that there is American culture, then as soon as you accept that idea, then and you accept that, you know, black music has a major part in it, then Scotty Moore somehow is this kind of junction point between whatever it was that T-Bone Walker and the people before in the black blues area were doing, and Mark Knopfler and all these other people we're talking about. I'm trying to think who, because Mark didn't emerge until the mid to late 70s, So before you get to Mark, there's a whole generation of people, of which George Harrison is obviously probably the key guy, because he's a very underestimated element of the Beatles. You know, we all think about the songs and how great they were, and the singing how great they were, but once again, George Harrison is in the Beatles as Scotty Moore is to Elvis. You know, they are very, very equivalent figures, and you listen to those Beatles records and the guitar playing is just gorgeous. As Paul McCartney is a very good bass player, that's also often overlooked, you know. So the musical element, you know, it's just always going to be the case, and it's always going to be overlooked and taken for granted.